This story was not carved into stone. It was not written on a battlefield monument. It survived in memory. For generations, priests carried it by voice, alone, memorized, protected, passed down with extraordinary precision. And hidden inside that sacred poetry is one of the oldest war stories humanity can still name. 10 kings, one river, one ruler standing alone against a coalition built to destroy him. This was Dasharajna, the battle of the 10 kings. It appears in the Rigveda, one of the oldest surviving texts in any Indo-European language. But the Rigveda was not a history book. It was sacred hymns, and that makes this battle both precious and difficult, because the poem gives us names, it gives us enemies, it gives us a river, a victory, and a defeat. But it also gives us gods, divine favor, religious meaning layered over military reality. So the real question is not, did this battle happen? The real question is how much history survived inside the hymn. The Battle of the 10 Kings is placed near the Parusni River, what we now call the Ravi, in northern Pakistan. The date is debated. Many scholars place the early world of the Rigveda somewhere between 1500 and 1200 BCE, though the chronology remains uncertain. There is no battlefield marker, no recovered army camp, no stone inscription. What remains is a poem that remembered a war so important it refused to disappear. To understand why, we need the world that produced it. There was no India as we know it today, no empire, no capital, commanding everything from a throne. The northwest of the subcontinent was a river world, tribes, cattle, warriors, chariots, small kingdoms, fighting for survival. This was Sapta Sindhu, the land of 7 rivers, and in that world, rivers were not scenery, they were life. Water meant crops, crops meant people, people meant soldiers, and soldiers meant survival. Whoever controlled the rivers controlled the future. Centuries earlier, the great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro had dominated this region, urban centers of astonishing sophistication. Brick streets, drainage systems, trade networks, spanning continents. But by the time of the Rigveda, that world was gone. What replaced it was more mobile, more martial, more dangerous. Tribes moving across plains. Wealth counted in cattle. Kings who needed priests, and priests who needed kings. And into that volatile world, one name began to rise above all others. Sudas. Sudas was king of the Bharata tribe. The Rigveda remembers him as a ruler of exceptional power, a king whose campaigns pushed the Bharata people outward, across rivers, across borders, across the ambitions of everyone around him. He was not simply defending what he had, he was taking more, and every victory he won made the map smaller for everyone else. Every river he controlled was a river someone else could no longer use. Every tribe he defeated was a warning to the next. For the surrounding kings, Sudas was not just a rival, he was a future they feared. But military power alone was not enough in the Vedic world. Kings did not rule by weapons only. They ruled with ritual, with sacrifice, with divine approval, and that meant priests mattered deeply. A king's priest did not simply recite prayers. He performed the rituals that linked kingship to the gods. He gave sacred legitimacy to political power. He shaped alliances. He could make a campaign feel blessed or doomed. Around Sudas stood 2 of the most important names in all of Vedic tradition, Vishvamitra and Vasishta. Tradition remembers a rupture. Sudas had once been associated with Vishvamitra, a powerful priestly figure of immense religious authority. But later, he is linked with Vasishta, Vishvamitra's rival. What exactly happened? We do not know. Whether Sudas dismissed Vishvamitra, whether the rivalry caused the war, whether later tradition used the names to explain an older conflict. All of it is debated. But in that world, a change of priests was not an administrative decision. It was a political earthquake, and it may have sent Vishvamitra to the enemies of Sudas. What followed was extraordinary. 10 kings gathered. Some of these names are debated. Some survive only as shadows in the text. Their territories are uncertain. Their cities, if they had cities, have not been found. But the poem remembers them as a confederation, an alliance, a force large enough to threaten the most powerful tribe in the Punjab. Their strategy did not need to be complicated. If Sudas continued to expand, they faced a brutal choice: unite now or be destroyed separately later. So they came together. They had numbers. They had alliances. They had the blessing, perhaps, of Vishvamitra himself. Against one king, they brought 10. Against one tribe, many. On paper, Sudas should have lost, but numbers do not always decide battles. Terrain does. Timing does. Discipline does. And rivers are among the most dangerous places to fight. A river crossing is never simple. An army crossing water loses formation. Chariots struggle. Command becomes harder. Men are split between two banks, and if the river is swollen, the danger multiplies. If an enemy is waiting at exactly the right moment, a crossing becomes a killing ground. The Rigveda describes the battle in sacred language. It says, Indra, the storm god, favored Sudas. The enemies were broken, their chariots shattered, their forces overwhelmed. To the poets, this was divine judgment. But beneath the hymn, a military picture appears. A large coalition moved toward a dangerous, swollen river. Sudas, possibly with knowledge of the terrain, possibly with the instinct of a general who had won before, struck at the moment the coalition was most exposed. Their numbers became a weakness. Too many kings, too many commands, too much confusion. Once the crossing went wrong, unity collapsed. And when unity collapsed, an alliance became a crowd. The poem remembers catastrophe. The river carried men away. Chariots failed. Formations broke. Warriors trapped between water and enemy with nowhere to go. The coalition had arrived as 10 kings. It shattered as none. Sudas survived. More than survived. He emerged from the Ravi valley as something the Punjab had not yet seen. A king who defeated 10 enemies at once and lived to have it written down. The consequences were immediate. The losing tribes were scattered. Some absorbed into the expanding Bharata realm. Others pushed west. Sudas continued to campaign. Later hymns record more battles, more victories, more rivers crossed. The Bharatas rose, and with them their name. We should be careful here. We cannot say Sudas built a vast empire. We cannot map his kingdom like a later state. The Rigveda is poetry, not a census, not a treaty. But what happened to that name is undeniable. Bharata. In time, that tribal name became something far larger, a civilizational identity, one of the names by which the subcontinent would come to know itself. There is no clean, straight line from Sudas to the modern nation, but the memory of the Bharatas became part of something that endured. And that is why this battle matters not only as military history, but as the moment a name was forged. The Battle of the 10 Kings left almost nothing physical behind. No monument, no battlefield cemetery, no recovered chariot wheels, only words. But sometimes words outlast stone. A king can lose his palace, an army can vanish, a battlefield can disappear beneath farms and floods and centuries of silence. But a poem, carried faithfully enough, can move through time. It can preserve a name, a place, a victory, the echo of men dying in a river 4,000 years ago. That is why Dasharajna still matters. It is not just a battle. It sits at the edge of history and myth, at the point where memory becomes literature and literature becomes identity. When kings depended on priests, when rivers decided power, when a single victory could lift one tribe above many, and when the story of a war could survive longer than every weapon used to fight it. The Ravi River still runs through Pakistan, changed by dams, reduced by the ambitions of later civilizations, but still there, and somewhere near its ancient course. 10 kings once marched toward a river, believing numbers were enough. They were wrong, and a poem remembered why. This is VANTIS. Subscribe, and let's decode history, one war at a time.